This is Dennis Ramundi and my co-host Phil Goldberg, author of American Veda. Our guest today, John Raatz, a friend of Phil's and mine, or at least somebody we know well and are familiar with his work. I thought he was very articulate and very impressed with the stuff he's doing, and looking forward to hearing more from what comes out of his nonprofit, the Global Alliance for Transformational Entertainment.
Yeah, John's doing very good work in the world. And, I've known him long enough to have seen him represent some really important people as a publicist, and then become impassioned about this notion of transformational entertainment. And I went to a couple of GATE events, and I was astonished by how many people showed up and how enthusiastic they were. There seems to be a big need that he's tapped into.
Right. He introduced me to Jim Carrey, and I believe he introduced you to Jim Carrey as well. That you actually gave a talk to Jim and some of his friends, and I was really blown away by how much of a spiritual seeker Jim Carrey is, and a very nice guy. What you see is what you get, just what you expect. Very friendly, very interested, curious, and I believe there was a great quote. There is a great quote from Jim Carrey, and it was something like, "I wish everybody had as much money and success as I have, so you could see that it's not what is fulfilling." And you can see that in him. He's constantly looking for more and deeper meaning in his life. So, very impressive.
Yeah, and we shouldn't be surprised. People are always surprised by when a public figure has a certain image and then they turn out to be deeper or more intelligent or more substantive than their public image would suggest. And it's a silly kind of method of stereotyping that we have. It's sort of like we assume professional athletes shouldn't be brilliant, or
Right.
gorgeous women shouldn't also be very smart, or that somebody who's a goofball on screen should have a deep, serious side. But
Right.
that's obviously a foolish way of looking at the world. As John said in the interview, Hollywood is just a sort of more public and glamorous reflection of every other field of life. There
Right.
are smart people, good people, deep people, spiritual people, terrible people, uh, through in every walk of life. So we shouldn't really be shocked.
Right. It's all there in the package. Uh, one of the things he discussed was about films and maybe more about storytelling, and that really hit me because I have a lot of problems. I go to a movie now, and if there's a lot of if it's an action film and it's all about special effects, and I can understand this. People like cinematography. They like that these effects can be created, three-dimensional films, 3D films, which I don't like. I'm more of a guy that likes stories, so I was glad he was emphasizing that. I think there's room in the world for both. I don't want to offend
Yeah,
anybody's taste, but if there can be more information, more emphasis on that, and also films that really hit you and hit you hard, and you go away in some ways a changed person from seeing the film.
yeah.
I think that's very important, and I think that's what his nonprofit is encouraging.
Yeah, but we shouldn't also get fooled by history. I mean, there have always been foolish and stupid and superficial movies. There are terrible novels and sensational and titillating novels, and then there are deep and brilliant literary novels. There's always been a mix of crass commercial entertainment and deep art
Right.
in every field. And while Shakespeare was writing, there were a lot of schlocky writers
Yeah, yeah.
putting
And,
on
and look,
plays.
I sometimes watch stuff that's trashy and not so good and not well written, and it just relaxes me.
Yeah,
I'm not against it. I'm all for dull entertainment like that. On the other hand, the fact that there are forces out there that are working for good storytelling and
yeah.
transformational film and entertainment. I think that's great.
And they've always been doing that, whether they think of transformational film or movies or music or whatever in a spiritual sense or a political sense or a social awareness sense. People have always had to fight to get those kind of projects off the
Right.
ground. I was just, in fact, listening to an interview with Berry Gordy, who started Motown,
Oh yeah.
and they were talking about the whole history of Motown, and someone asked him about Marvin Gaye, and when Marvin Gaye was the biggest selling artist at Motown in the late 60s, after Martin Luther King was assassinated and the civil rights movement was and everything was in turmoil, he wanted to make an album of socially conscious music. And Berry Gordy wouldn't do it. He didn't want him to do it. It would be bad. He thought it would be bad for business. But ultimately, Marvin Gaye convinced him. And the result was the song What's Going On,
Hmm.
which became not only a kind of incredible anthem of social change, but made a whole lot of money. So,
Right.
sometimes, artists are, have their finger on the pulse of what needs to be said and or seen in the world.
Yeah, art is, especially performing art, visual art's very powerful. I mean, film has a huge impact on the consciousness and the values of people, and I think it's a time of transition in the world now, so that those influences are going to be very important, very significant.
Yeah, and I think John is right on the cutting edge, because he would probably argue, and I would agree with him, that the usual kind of split people perceive between art and commerce,
Hmm.
is not necessarily true. Great art can make money,
Hmm.
and you can transform people's consciousness and awaken their awareness, open their hearts, and also have great entertainment
Right.
that is commercially successful.
I just had the thought a mutual friend of ours, Dean Slider, wrote a book, Cinema Nirvana, and the subtitle of the book is Enlightenment Lessons from the Movies. And it's interesting, he uses movies like The Godfather, Casablanca, and all, and he brings out lessons of enlightenment and transformation on the level of human consciousness by lessons he's learned from these movies. I think Wizard of Oz is in there, and it was a great read actually.
Yeah, it was, and we should get Dean on to talk about this. I'll let him know we promoted his book, because one of the things about it is, people usually think of so-called spiritual movies. They think of It's a Wonderful Life
Right.
and Brother, Sun, Sister, Moon, or things that are obvious. But there's great lessons to be learned and important insights, in all great art.
There are lessons to be learned everywhere, every day, and it's just being plugged into that. But I was, very impressed with John. I'm very happy about the work that he is doing, and I want to really keep track of it. And I'm sure have him on again at some point and discuss what he's up to. This latest work he's doing is with Eckhart Tolle and the new book he's coming out with. So that should be interesting. And I think Eckhart Tolle now, according to John, is in a period where he's sort of inward in writing and not speaking so much and doing his thing.
Well, we'll see what comes up. We'll stay in touch with John and maybe have him back sometime in the coming months.
All right, Phil, till next time, this is Spirit Matters, Spirit Matters Talk. SpiritMattersTalk.com is where you'll find us. Please subscribe and or email in. Tell us what you're thinking. Any advice for guests? We have some great guests lined up coming up, and we have many folks who have expressed interest in coming on the show. So we'll keep you fed with more and more knowledge and information through our interviews.
Okay. Thanks, Dennis.